Hi, I'm Charlotte Woods, and today's interview we're going to be exploring an area of the researcher's job which is perhaps slightly neglected at times. So as well as spending time in the lab or in the library or in the field or in the office writing up, etc., an important element of any researcher's work in order of explaining the significance of their work for other professionals and the wider public. And today, Alexander Studies Online is very lucky to be able to talk to somebody, Monika Gross, who has a lot of experience in this area. And she's going to be sharing some of those experiences with us and giving us some advice on how we can all get more involved. So I'll hand over to you, Monika.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Charlotte. Yes, my name is Monika Gross, and I live in America, in Western North Carolina in the South, although I lived in New York City for many years as well. And most recently, over the last 6-7 years, I've been working with the Poise project, which is a nonprofit that was started here with some colleagues to try to bridge the gap between the Alexander principles and the general public across socioeconomic groups. And so part of what we've been doing is trying to show up and engage with professionals in other professions. And so that's, I think, the subject of our discussion today.
Right, thank you. So I suppose a good place to start would be, Monika, why do you think it's so important for us to engage with professionals in other fields?
Or make friends and influence people. I think that's what Dale Carnegie used to say. But it's true. It doesn't change. It's that human connection. And it's enjoyable to have an exchange of ideas with people who are perhaps serving or working with populations that you work with or are interested in working with, and seeing their unique perspectives. And then, of course, sharing yours. So you're there to familiarize yourself with other professionals' norms, their structures, and their language, so that you can communicate with them better, and to learn how to navigate in those institutional settings that you might want to be impactful in. And even more importantly, so that you can familiarize these other professionals in what you do. And the importance there is to find the language that is going to communicate that, sort of to translate the conversation into a language that these other professional experts will understand. They are looking for new things. They're looking for opportunities to help their patients, if you're in a medical setting, that could improve the quality of life of their clients. And also, they often don't have a lot of resources either. And so they're looking for support. For maybe there's ways you can help them and support them that we'll talk about a little later. But a big thing is to get them excited and interested in doing research on Alexander technique with us.
Yeah, great. And I think that point about communication is so important. Every field has different ways of saying the same thing or describing the same phenomena. And it's, to actually share some kind of common language is really important.
Yeah, I think there's jargon. We have our jargon, they have their jargon. We might have to learn their jargon, but everybody enjoys speaking on the personal level too. So jargon aside, you can make friends. Your new best friend might be an occupational therapist.
Yeah. And how has it been of value to you that we have this kind of body of research that supports the Alexander technique as a practice?
Yes, extremely useful, extremely helpful, because in most professions, research of some sort or publications of some sort are kind of the basis for discussion and conversation. It kind of starts things off. That's how professionals learn about other work in their field or about work in similar fields. So the more research that we have that's accessible and available, the more there can be that interaction, just from sending somebody an article to read or a new publication. So in our perspective, because we're not really researchers necessarily as Alexander professionals, we think this one great back pain study should just break open the floodgates of interest in Alexander, but we forget that there are thousands and thousands of back pain studies out there, and we only have that one that we are showing. So it's important to understand that there's two kinds of research. There's basic research, which is trying to get at why does Alexander technique work in the way it does? And there have been some great articles recently, the kinesiology review pieces. And then there's clinical research, which is how does a particular Alexander-based intervention work, and how much of it do you have to do, and in what form? So is it 10 weeks, once a week for an hour in a group setting, or is it one-on-one? So these are the sorts of things that professionals get interested in. And so at the end of it, you have what they call evidence-based, replicable, and scalable. Those are the three things that if you want to work in particularly large institutional settings like public schools, that you have to have some kind of foundation of research that will support that. Evidence-based can mean just simply it doesn't do any harm. It's not providing greater risks, and that there seem to be these benefits. And replicable means it's in that particular dosage or form, and it can be repeated in that way, and people can be trained to deliver it in that way. And the third thing, scalable, is where we really have a struggle, because it means, well, if every public school in America wanted an Alexander course right now, we wouldn't have the people to deliver it unless we open it up to other professionals who work in those fields that we can train to bring some of these elements into their classrooms, for instance.
Yeah, we have to think quite creatively, don't we, about how we can mesh with other people, and we may just be part of an offer, which together will,
Yes, like that's interdisciplinary team. We want to be on a team.
Yeah,
we don't want to be out there on our own. We want to be part of a team.
Sure.
And have those conversations and work together. We'll provide things that other professionals can't. And we need to identify what are those things that are unique that we can offer, and how will that support what therapies or so forth already exist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Basically, we're there to try to connect to the people we want to help.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
And how have you been going about making these connections with other professionals?
Well, I think it's two words: show up. You have to show up. You have to show up at conferences. You have to show up in joining different membership organizations and participating. We've been creating, with the Poise Project, we've been creating nice professional materials that we can use to introduce ourselves. We've been creating very nice PowerPoint presentations to talk about Alexander to different professionals, and we have people vet them. All the language, all the content is vetted by people from those professions, so we're not stepping on any toes, or
or clarifying, as you say, like the communication issues, making sure they're understandable.
Absolutely. And then we also, as we begin to become more facile at being at these conferences, we ask to be able to present our research with research posters, and we get involved in symposiums with other professionals, and we deliver what we call instructional courses. For instance, I'm going to a conference in the fall, the American Congress of Rehabilitation Medicine, and I'm part of teams for 5 different symposiums in areas that I don't necessarily have personal expertise, such as working with people with stroke or working with refugees, but I do have expertise to add to the presentation. And so I'm invited to participate as well and talk about the Alexander potential there.
Okay, great. And what kind of reception do you tend to get, or have you been having from these other professionals?
Extremely positive and very warm and welcoming. There's lots of interest. I think it's a perfect time in the 21st century for the kind of work of whole person health, which is really coming of age. So even though people may not know Alexander, they're starting to have heard about Alexander. You have to prepare, right? You have to do that little bit of research to know how to speak simply and adequately about what we do. And you also have to be consistent. If you say you're going to show up for something, show up. If you say you're going to do a task, do it. But also know that everyone's overworked. And if you can't meet a deadline, just communicate about it.
Yeah.
And you're still welcome. Everybody's looking for help. If there's a particular person you want to talk to at a conference, do a little research about them. Find out, go on PubMed or Google Scholar, find out what kind of research they're interested in, if there's any overlap. Find out what university or town they work in, and see if there's places where you might be able to collaborate. And remember, what we're doing here is what you would call promotion rather than marketing. Marketing is where you want somebody to sign up for a class and give you some money right away. Promotion is creating demand.
Yeah.
So we're creating demand through making these relationships and sharing what we do with people and supporting them in what they do.
Yeah. It's getting the word out there, really, isn't it? Just making sure that more people have heard of the Alexander technique in ways that...
Absolutely. We want those words to be common knowledge in these professional settings, and for people's eyes to light up and say, yes, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And what organizations would you suggest would be good fits in terms of making these kind of connections? Obviously, you're based in the US, but I know you've got an international sort of reputation and experience. So,
yeah, I think because Alexander is global and we have a global interest as teachers to get this out into the world in general, it's kind of like act local, think global, right? It's going to have a global impact. So if you're interested in showing up at these sorts of conferences and joining membership groups, the first step is just, who are you interested in working with? What kinds of populations? And then just go online and see, well, what membership organizations are there for experts in those fields? And what kinds of conferences do they go to? And is there one near where you are or travelable? And the ones, for example, that we did when we started the project to reach out to people living with Parkinson's, we started to go to the International Parkinson's and Movement Disorder Specialist conferences. And then they had regional conferences that are in Pan America. And that was very useful because it was in our region and we made those connections. The American Congress for Rehabilitation Medicine that I mentioned is great to meet other rehab specialists in multiple fields. Speech language pathologists and occupational therapists, I think, are the ones that are maybe closest to what we do, even more than physical therapists or even psychotherapists. Occupational therapists help people be functional in their daily life, and speech language pathologists help them with a lot of their vocal issues, swallowing, respiration, things like that. So I think there's links there. Also, find out what nonprofits exist that work with these populations and what conferences they have and how you can get involved. For instance, the Parkinson Foundation, which gave us some grants, runs this huge World Parkinson Congress every 3 years. I'm going just in 2 weeks to Spain, to Barcelona, to that. And it's an unusual conference because not only is it doctors and researchers and allied health professionals, which is normal at these international conferences, there's a large body of delegates who are attendants who are people living with Parkinson's in their family, 30 to 40%. And so it's a great place to feel that interaction, to learn how to speak to the public about what we do, which is different than speaking to doctors about what we do.
Sure.
So, And there's a great conference, a very small group called Integrative Medicine for Everyone, which I am, and then the number 4 us, we'll put it in the info with the video, but that's a really lovely one for us to get involved with. It's very interested in diversity and inclusion and making sure that integrative medicine is available to many, and there's lots of hardworking people, really grassroots efforts. So I really highly recommend that one.
Yeah. And I like the idea of this starting local and then building up. I mean, even people who perhaps aren't very confident, have never presented at a conference, sort of local community groups, you make connections with other people at a more regional level, etc. And things can just snowball, can't they, in ways that you don't really anticipate.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we're all nervous. I think we're all hesitant. I think we all feel unsure. And I think we all feel judged. I mean, any conference that you go to, they're just as nervous as you are.
Yes.
They're just as exposed. So being friendly, asking questions, you're there to learn. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about how this works. Ask. If you don't know something, say, I don't know. What an interesting question. I'll try to find out and get back to you. Can I have your email? Can I have your card?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to have read 20 books about neurology in order to interact with a neurologist. They don't expect you to know about neurology. They want to know about what you do, and they'll tell you. They'll go, oh, that's interesting. That might really be helpful with this symptom of my client, you see? So you're there to have a conversation, to have a dialogue, not a monologue. I think that we need to trust our skills, our knowledge, do a little bit of research, be prepared, but also be there to enjoy yourself. There's fun, there's after the conference, as they say, what happens at the conference stays at the conference. You'd be surprised. And movement disorder specialists, my goodness, they have such good use. They move really well. And I tease them. I say, well, you're a movement disorder specialist, but I'm Alexander people. We're movement order specialists.
Yeah.
Humor works too.
Yeah. Okay. So if someone's feeling a bit hesitant or unsure, then your advice would be to kind of go for it,
Yeah, I'd say out of literally hundreds of interactions I've had with specialists, I have only had one negative experience. And I mean, that's amazing. And then the next morning, the morning after, my colleague and I on my team, my other Alexander colleague and I were coming down the hotel elevator, and he got on and he looked so sheepish and embarrassed. And I realized everyone has a bad night. So don't even take that kind of experience, if you do have it, very seriously, because everybody's crabby. Everybody's, has an off performance. So don't reach out again. Don't let anything shut you down like that. So the best ways I found of joining into these and participating has been with within the membership organizations, getting involved. So, for instance, with the American Congress for Rehabilitation Medicine, they have, and every organization has these special interest groups. We do, right? STAT has that, right? Special interest groups, networking groups, and task forces. Get involved, because these are usually small, very functional little groups of people who like to get things done. So join in, offer as much help as you can. And that's where you really get to know people and see that they build up respect and interest, and just keep showing up. Alexander, we can fit in almost any kind of networking group as we, and so those relationships grow over time. Also, I learned a lot about how they don't know everything either. They want to do a project called a rapid review of research literature, and they had never done it before. And I said, God, well, then, so we were all learning how to do that. So don't be afraid that you're going to be in over your head. If it's something you don't understand, you don't have to get involved, or you just ask, can somebody teach me how to do this? Everybody always needs help. And these are people who work hard for low pay, long hours, little acknowledgement. Research is not a sexy job. And just asking them about their research project. How is it going? What barriers have you found? What struggles? What's going on with your funding? What happened during the pandemic? People are people, and having that human connection and offering them a research shoulder to cry on can be a huge help.
But just acknowledging and giving them a chance to talk about what they've been doing with, someone who's interested. Yeah, it's a big boost.
And one thing I learned to do, Charlotte, was, we don't do a lot of case study discussion at conferences like physical therapy conference. People go in little breakout groups, and they'll be handed like 3 different case studies. How would you assess this person? What might you do? And I was at this symposium out in Portland with Gabrielle Saja, who's an Alexander teacher in Washington, D.C., and also a physical therapist. And she and I were part of this group when we were case studying, oh, well, the Alexander way would be this, PT might do this, occupational might do this, speech language might do this. And afterwards, she said, it was really the first conference I've been to where I could interact with fellow PTs, and they really understood what we were talking about. And we were as part of a team, an interdisciplinary team. We want to have that, be part of that team approach.
Yeah, no, great. All right. And you mentioned that the Poise project might be able to support this kind of activity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I mentioned before that over time, we've been building up materials, professional materials, and also being able to translate those into other languages and print them in professional ways. Banners, standing banners, table throws are really important if you're doing any presentation, having a nice table throw. So we're very happy to be consultants to help you do these sorts of things and be effective. If you and a team want to go to a conference and have a table or an exhibit booth, also we can act as a fiscal sponsor to help you raise money. But so SAD or other membership organizations, really anything that's a nonprofit or charity can do that. We're an American charity, so the contributions from Americans are tax deductible. Anyone from around the world can donate, but then it's not tax deductible. So it can be a professional deduction for Alexander teachers. And then, as I said, we can act as a consultant. So our sustainability is through grants, donations, and services that we provide. And one of those services is a kind of donor service of consultation. So if somebody has a particular question about something that we can help with, then we ask for a donation to the Poise Project, and we spend that time and give those materials to help.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you're young, if you're like a trainee or just a recent graduate, that's even better. You might feel more intimidated, but actually, if you go to the conferences, there is a red carpet laid out for you, what they call early career people. There's special meetings, there's special symposiums. They mentor you. People want to take you under their wing. For instance, one of Rajal Cohen's, Dr. Cohen, who is our scientific consultant and does our research with us, she's one of her undergraduate assistants, Celeste, came with me to this conference in Miami that was this big Pan-American movement disorder conference, and she did the poster presentation. And she interacted, and these world-renowned movement disorder specialists spent like half an hour talking with her. If you're young, if you're a trainee or a recent graduate, there's internships you can find through these conferences.
No, a great opportunity to be doing that early in your career as well. Yeah.
And going to other posters at poster sessions, you meet other young people doing research. It's a great way to make connections. Lifelong professional connections can be made just at those poster sessions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. You've been very generous with your time. Is there anything else you wanted to say, or?
I just want to inspire people to do this. We've kind of been so insular over the years, and I don't really understand that because we have so much to offer, and there's so much interest now. We kind of stand in a circle facing inward a lot, talking to each other, having great conversations, enjoying putting hands on. We really need to turn and have that circle facing outward, that we know we have each other's backs and support, but we're looking out towards the public, both sort of that bottom up familiarization with Alexander technique from the public, from grassroots connections with your communities and your public, but also this top-down dissemination, which is coming through the other professionals. And somehow that meets in the middle, and the public will be aware of what we do, will start to have access to what we do in various forms. And just get out there. And it's so enjoyable. And you'll know that you've moved the profession forward. It's very satisfying. Very satisfying to see eyes light up with interest and think, oh, that sounds so exciting. I can see how that would help my client.
Yeah.